If you have a question for maybe your township, wherever you live, if there's the information that you've missed or that you want to find out, I have the results in front of me and I will announce them on the show. But it is impossible with the just so many elections that happened yesterday, local elections. It's impossible to go through every town in our area, every various elected office. So if you have anything specific you would like me to bring up for you, we'll go through some of the major ones here in a moment, some of the people that were on this program, some of the major, depending on where you're at, Chemung, and then we'll talk about the proposals. So that's all coming up, but I want to get my contact information out there for you so that you can reach out. I'd love to help inform you on what happened last night if you do not already know. First, on the proposals before we go to break. Proposal 1, and we're going to get to Chemung. Chemung had other ones as well, but this is statewide. Voters were being asked whether to remove a debt limit for small city school districts. The smaller districts have argued that the limit is unfair when they are trying to tackle more ambitious projects to improve schools, and that all schools across the state should be treated equal. That passed really overwhelmingly, 64% to 35%. That's a yes, a solid yes. New York State proposal number 2. Voters are being asked to consider allowing cities and towns to go beyond their debt limits to build new sewage facilities. They currently have this power, and the measure would extend it for 10 more years. Some conservative officials who are worried about debt oppose the measure, but that passed as well, even more so than the small school vote. 68% yes, 31% no. So there's, if that's something you were watching closely, there's your information. Now, also at the, for those of our friends who are watching right now that are in Chemung, Schuyler, when it came to the Supreme Court vote, Cheryl Insignia won that vote, and we have a comment from her saying, "I am honored to have earned the voters' trust to serve as the next state Supreme Court justice in the 6th Judicial District. Thank you to all those who supported me in Broome, Chemung, Shenango, Cortland, Delaware, Madison, Otsego. How do you say that? Otsego? I know it's not that. Otsego, Schuyler, Tioga, and Tompkins County. For the next 14 years, I will strive." 14-year terms. Isn't that wild? For the next 14 years, I will strive to serve with honor and distinction, ensuring that all who come into the courtroom are treated fairly and impartially in the eyes of the law. Thank you goes out to all of my supporters who helped make this campaign successful. I am truly and humbly grateful and appreciative for all of you and for all you have done. It's a little small on my screen. I apologize. This is a win for all of us. So there's a statement from Supreme Court Justice-elect Cheryl Insignia. Now we're going to go through some of the more local races by Chemung and Steuben. But again, please reach out to me. The number's on the bottom of the screen. Please reach out to me if there's any question you have specifically maybe about your area. I do have that all printed out, and hopefully if I have the time during the break, I can scroll down and put it up on the screen for you as well. But let's take our first break. We're just getting warmed up on the day after Election Day edition of Frankly Speaking. So please stay with us. We'll be right back. Another beautiful day here on Market Street. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. Let's take a look at some of the local election results. Again, if you have anyone you would like, oh, by the way, thank you for the 2 virtual waves during break. If there's anybody you are curious about specifically, please reach out and I will read those for you. There's a lot of uncontested races. We're not going to go through those, even though they're big names or names that you may know. But we'll start with a contested race here. Dan Mandel won mayor for the city of Elmira. As you see the numbers there. Now, these are unofficial results. I know we all have to say that, but this was updated. 100% of the precincts are in. That is what we're looking at for numbers. Dan Mandel winning re-election for mayor of the city of Elmira. Now, let's go through some of the lists. There's going to be a little bit of reading going on here, so please bear with me. Now, at the Chemung County level, I mentioned the two proposals that both passed at the state level. Let's take a look at proposals that were specific to Chemung County. Proposal number 3, shall the charter of Chemung County be amended to impose term limits on the office of county executive, prohibiting eligibility for office after 3 consecutive terms. So the county executive having 3 consecutive terms, a term limit. That passed really overwhelmingly. 7,729 yes, no, 1,197. So the charter shall be amended to impose term limits on the county executive, 3 consecutive terms. Proposal number 4 for Chemung County. I feel like you're at the racetrack and we're handicapping races here. But shall the charter of Chemung County be amended to impose term limits on the office of county legislator, prohibiting eligibility for office after 3 consecutive terms. So also 3 consecutive terms. Again, overwhelmingly yes, 7,679. No, 1,215. Proposal number 5, and the final proposal we have on the program this morning, 2024 Chemung County Library District Budget Proposal. I'm not going to read all the legalese. You read it at the ballot box yesterday. That passed 5,928 to 2,938. So I mentioned Dan Mandel winning mayor. And by the way, let me just take a step back before we go to our next break. And we're going to talk about Steuben here in a moment as well. Congratulations to everybody that did run. If you've never ran before, it is, a lot of work. Some people take it more seriously than others, and you know how a campaign works. But really, congratulations, no matter what happened, win, lose, or draw. It's not something to take lightly. Thank you for getting involved in your community. Thank you for wanting to make a difference. And so everybody, no matter what happened last night, should walk away at least proud of the effort that they put in, because it can be a little rough and tumble at times. So we're going to talk more about the results. I do have some other things if we get to it this morning that I would love to talk about. A few things here about Biden, a few things here about Trump, those type of things. But I do think it's important to go through some of these just quickly. Also, again, contact me if you have someone specifically you're looking for on the list. Chemung or Steuben I have in front of me. I can search elsewhere as well. But let's take another short break. We'll be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Thank you again for joining us here on Frankly Speaking on Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. Going through the election results, please, again, reach out to me if there's anyone specific. I don't mind what town it is. I just have to find it here if you have not seen the information yet yourself. So in the city council in Elmira, in the 1st district, Nick Grazo, the incumbent, won. 2nd district, Corey Cook. 4th district, J. Gary Brin. 5th district, Jackie Wilson. And in the 6th district, Nanette Moss, the incumbent, won there. Okay, so that's kind of a quick overview of Chemung. Now we look at Steuben County. The race that was arguably the most talked about, at least locally around here, of course, was, and we were lucky enough to have both candidates on the program on Frankly Speaking, was Joe Tobia and Allison Hunt. I'll put those numbers up on the screen for you this morning. Joe Tobia defeated Allison Hunt in the county legislative race in the 2nd district. So Joe Tobia, 1,243 to 557. That was a much talked about race. Then we go to the 3rd district. That's Bath, for our friends in Bath. Nick Pelham won that race. And in the 4th district, Wayland Cohocton, Shannon Longston. Okay, now also in the city of Corning, another race where we had both candidates on was City Council of Corning in the 4th ward. It was Marshall Hyde versus Lisa Illig Homan. We again thank both candidates for being on the program to have their message given to the masses. Marshall Hyde defeated Lisa Illig-Homan 146 to 132. And this raises a topic that I bring up a lot whenever we go through election results. Think of how close that is. You know, people say my vote doesn't matter. Or, you hear that all the time. But 146 to 132. Now you can, and I'm sure I don't want to speak for Lisa Illig-Homan, but I'm sure she's thinking, well, could I have done this different? Everybody that does that when it's a close race says, how many more doors could I have knocked on? Or what could I have done different? But that's how much power you have at the local level, and that's why we talk about it so often on this program. I saw numbers in here of smaller towns that I'm not going to read just because we don't have the time, but you're talking 1 to 2 vote difference. It's remarkable. And I mean, some of them are smaller areas and smaller numbers, but for instance, in the just right here, looking at my list, town of Bradford, Jody Pierce, 84, Andrea English, 80. 4 vote difference. That just happened to pop in. No reason I bring up that race specifically. Just remarkable how much. And of course, we can talk about low voter turnout. That's very discouraging. It's a conversation we've had a million times on this program. And I'm sure there's a lot of candidates waking up this morning that are very much lamenting low voter turnout. Now, another couple guests that we had on the program, that's why I'm going to bring them up specifically. For the Town of Corning Supervisor, this is Town of Corning Supervisor, Jennifer Mullen defeated Kimberly Feehan 618 to 293. And Stu Sammis, who we also had on the program for Town Council in the Town of Corning, is now one of the 2 winners. Him and Randy Brenning are on the board. He won re-election. All right, so I think that does it for me just reading numbers. In Pennsylvania, though, because we mentioned this yesterday on the program, Justice of the Supreme Court, Daniel McCaffrey, the Democrat, did defeat Carolyn Carluccio in that race for Pennsylvania Justice of the Supreme Court. And do I have anything else marked? Because we're going to talk about the national level as well. There's a couple big takeaways, depending on what outlet you go to. Most saying not a good night for Republicans. Glenn Youngkin, definitely. We'll talk about... No, I got time. Again, reach out. I know it gets a little frantic when we're reading numbers to you, but let's talk about this. Glenn Youngkin was stunned in Virginia. Democrats kept the state Senate in Virginia and flipped the House of Delegates. Now, this was supposed to be basically what Youngkin said, because you had some Republicans, more moderate Republicans, thinking that he was a rising star, that he is the only one that could defeat Trump. And he said something to the extent of, we've got to worry about basically flipping the House. We have to worry about getting Republicans in the state Senate. And so he put all his eggs in this basket, if you will, and it did not go well for him. As a matter of fact, on Drudge Report this morning, I don't remember, I'm paraphrasing, but it said basically presidential dreams dead for Glenn Youngkin. While Republican donors have been urging Youngkin to make a late entry into the 24 presidential race, which I think we had the conversation. It was a weird kind of out of left field type thing. Not because there's any real animosity towards Youngkin. It just did not seem viable, did not seem like a winning strategy. It almost seemed like the only way we can beat Hillary Clinton is Jeb Bush mindset, right? Or the only way we can beat Barack Obama is Mitt Romney, because we need a more moderate. Anyway, but also there was quite a few other big stories, especially out of Ohio, which we'll get to in just a moment. But the first-term governor, again, Glenn Youngkin, said he had to gain control of the General Assembly. That was the word I was looking for, words. Gain control of the General Assembly first if he was going to run for president. He also vowed to push through a 15-week abortion ban. Virginia voters rejected that. with Democrats estimated to win at least 21 state Senate seats, retaining their majority, and 51 seats in the House of Delegates, gaining control from the Republicans. The Virginia results were part of an overall good night for Democrats, writes the Daily Mail out of the United Kingdom, which saw Kentucky Democrat Governor Andy Beshear win re-election and abortion rights preserved in the red state of Ohio. We're going to dive a little deeper into that, just giving you a quick overview. Ohio voters who voted for former President Donald Trump twice also voted to legalize marijuana. An interesting one, and for some reason, I might have talked about this just quickly yesterday. There was a pretty interesting race going on in Mississippi. Now, Mississippi, the Republican won governor. I'll get that right out there. But a lot of people were following this race closely because the Democrat candidate was Brandon Presley, who happened to be the second cousin of Elvis Presley. So a lot of people were using maybe, could there be a star factor there? I remember reading a piece, and I think that's why I brought it up on the program before, where someone's saying, I'm normally Republican, but this guy is really, and you always take that with a grain of salt when someone says, I'm normally Republican, but this guy's really dynamic. He's got some really fresh ideas. So people were watching that race closely. But Elvis Presley's second cousin, the Democrat candidate for Mississippi governor, did fall short to Republican Governor Tate Reeves. That was your quick overview. Now we're going to take that break. Again, if you have any questions about any of the results, please contact me at that number on the bottom of your screen. We got a couple other things we are going to talk about outside of last night's elections, but that's coming up in just a little bit. So stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV, Big Fox. You are watching Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. I'm Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Market Street in Corning. We're going over some of the election results from yesterday. If you have any specific questions for your town, your city, whatever, just drop me a line at that number on the bottom of your screen. We'll get that to you before the show is off. I just got this in my email from, and you may have heard of them before, a Wallet Hub, kind of like a polling group. Just something, take it with a grain of salt, but we know that the recent news is that consumer debt is exceeding $17.3 trillion in the third quarter. So they looked at New York State specifically. Did you know the average New York household debt, $138,055. New York's debt increase ranks as the 22nd highest in the nation. Just something that piqued my interest. Back to election results. So we're talking about Elvis Presley's second cousin, which sounds very strange if you're just tuning in. But Brandon Presley was running for Mississippi governor. A lot of people were watching that race closely because it was surprisingly competitive. As a matter of fact, heading into November, Presley outraised Reeves, according to third fundraising quarter reports. But though the incumbent did actually, Tate Reeves, have more to spend at the time. So Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves projected to win re-election. All right. CNN, it's always a good idea to look from all sides as we do on this program. CNN had the takeaways from Election Day 2023. When we're done with this, we're going to get away from election results again with the caveat you can contact me at any time and I will get you do my best anyway to get you the information that you seek. As Ohio goes, so goes the nation, they wonder at CNN, because what we already knew is that Joe Biden and other Democrats are going to run very heavy on abortion. And Ohio, at least as you read some of the outlets, depending on what outlet you go to, suggesting that that is a winning message. Tuesday night's election results probably won't change the equation for Biden in 2024, given Ohio's recent presidential electoral history. But how about Senator Sherrod Brown? The Ohio Democrat faces a difficult re-election run next year, but outcomes from the Buckeye State may give him a boost. You're going to hear this a lot. CNN's not ahead of the game on this. We've already heard it a lot, but saying already a proven political winner for Democrats, abortion rights further solidified their place as a driving force in next year's election when voters in Ohio, an increasingly conservative state that voted twice for Trump, passed a ballot measure on Tuesday enshrining them in the state constitution. Enshrining abortion, as they put it here, abortion rights into the Constitution. Red, blue, and purple states alike have greenlit similar proposals, solidifying a trend that defies partisan expectations and could have an outsized influence on next year's federal election. So yes, we will hear a lot about that. Next takeaway, according to CNN, and we mentioned it earlier, Glenn Youngkin and Virginia hit a wall. Now we have the no 15-week abortion ban as Youngkin was pushing. They denied the governor and the party the legislative majorities they craved, is the wording that CNN puts. It also puts, and I hate to beat a dead horse here. I know I've already said it, but it also puts to bed rumors that Youngkin, who has already insisted he has no ambitions to move north of Virginia, will attempt a late entry into the 2024 GOP presidential primary. Yes, you had some more moderate Republicans trying to push him in, believing in their mind he was some type of knight in shining armor that could beat former President Trump. The logic there turned on the governor's ability to craft a coalition that includes the far right, the center right, and the pure centrist swing voter, or something akin to what won him the governor's mansion in 2021. But with Democrats to retain control of the Senate and actually flip the House of Delegates, Youngkin's power appears to have met its limit. Next, Democrat Andy Beshear won re-election in Kentucky. Now that's interesting because I guess I didn't realize this, but some call him McConnell's protege, but it's someone that Trump also endorsed, Daniel Cameron, and he is a rising star. I don't like to say was a rising star. He's still got plenty of time in his career, but kind of a rising star, someone we heard a lot from. His defeat will stir a lot of finger pointing, and you already have former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie using it as a way to attack Trump. You've seen a lot of that if you've watched any of the coverage thus far. I know it's early after election night. But Governor Chris Christie called it another loss for Trump. The losing will only end for Republicans if we rid ourselves of Donald Trump, said Chris Christie. Trump, loser in 18, 20, 21, 22, and now 23. And we know that's Chris Christie's essentially campaign message, is just to attack Trump. And then Democrats' big night. This is the second to last takeaway from CNN. Democrats' big night despite Biden's weak polling. Yes, they had more. Oh, we're going to talk about that in a moment. Yeah, let's move on here. But yes, Biden's polls continue to look weaker and weaker. But the media is saying, but wait a minute. It was a big night for Democrats. So what does this mean in the general? In the general. Interesting question. Okay. Now, we're going to take a break because I mentioned the president's polling. It is amazing to me how much glowing coverage this administration can get. How many softball questions, how many ignoring major stories can this administration get and still not be happy? Because they've sent another memo. You recall this happened once before, sending another memo to the media saying your polling coverage isn't fair. We don't like how much you talk about our bad polls. It's unbelievable. It's this what was a pressure campaign that they have on the media, whether it's the media or social media, as we saw with censorship. I would say it should be troubling to the media themselves, but very often they heed the warning when they receive a memo like this. They realize, let's step back. Because let's face it, the polls are bad, and there has been a lot of talk lately of maybe seeing if the president would want to not run for re-election. Now, time's running out on that, by the way. But, with David Axelrod, that was the biggest name that could be going after the president, saying maybe it's not your time, Joe. Maybe you had a good 4 years, Joe. Let's move along. For David Axelrod to say that, it's almost as if it could open the floodgates. And you did see some of it. The media is still apprehensive on how they cover it. They don't want to go all in with the, let's get him out, because it's still ultimately up to Biden. So if he runs, they don't want to be seen and have their words used against them as having went after the man running against, presumably, Donald Trump. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. I know I kind of just did, but plenty of other topics as well. Please feel free to contact me if you have any questions about last night's elections. But right now, we will take a short break, and then we'll be back with Frankly Speaking. Hey, can you see them there putting up the Christmas lights on Market Street? Which, speaking of Market Street, that's where we're broadcasting live from here on Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acom. I received this comment during break. If last night's elections showed anything, the future is looking very bleak. What was thought to be determining voting factors, what at least the media is calling the determining voting factors, only prove that there is no positive future for the youth. This again from a viewer. We as parents want our children to do better than we have. The light at the end of the tunnel is getting dimmer. Thank you for the comment. You see the number on the bottom of the screen. Again, if you have any questions about the elections as well, I would love to get that information to you. I know sometimes it's kind of tricky, and I happen to have all of that in front of me. Okay. Yesterday, I don't want to say coming out of nowhere, but I was not expecting to have this for you this morning. House has censored Representative Rashida Tlaib over her defense of Hamas. The House of Representatives voted Tuesday night to censure, such a tricky word, Representative Rashida Tlaib, Democrat from Michigan, for defending Hamas's October 7th terror attack against Israel as, quote, resistance, and calling for the destruction of the Jewish state. Now, Tlaib is the 26th member of Congress to be censured by the House in the legislative body's history. 26th. Pretty remarkable. The censure vote, I hope I don't have to say that much longer, initially scheduled for Wednesday. This is why I didn't expect it on the radar. It was scheduled for Wednesday, but it was apparently moved up after Representative Rich McCormick's office, the congressman who introduced the resolution, received death threats. It's getting scary out there. Quote, I take the safety of my team seriously. I am temporarily closing my physical district office location in Cummings, Georgia, due to serious threats of violence against my staff. These threats have been reported to Capitol Police and will be investigated fully. Now, McCormick's resolution passed in a 234 to 188 vote, with 4 members voting present. This is, I've got to say, this is kind of interesting. 22 Democrats voted with 212 Republicans to censure Tlaib, and 4 Republicans voted with 184 Democrats against the resolution. So it is a bipartisan censure, but the numbers are really interesting there. I unfortunately don't believe I could find, at least not easily, who the 4 Republicans were. Now this is, I don't have the answer for this either. Tlaib was not required to stand in the well of the House and be rebuked by the Speaker, as is traditionally the case. So traditionally, you are rebuked by the Speaker. Tlaib was not required to do so. Interesting. Those are the numbers. Yep, as I said, I couldn't get the specific 4 Republicans. I'll try to find that for you maybe at the next break. But 234 to 188 to censure Representative Rashida Tlaib. The punishment is largely symbolic, according to Fox News, but it was a formal public rebuke of her most recent anti-Israel comments made in the wake of the war with Hamas. And now, if you're not familiar with Rich McCormick, who put this measure forward, he is a freshman from Georgia. McCormick said, if this is not worthy of censure, what is? When you can call for the annihilation of a country and its people, if that's not worthy of a censure, what is? In the text of his resolution, the Georgia Republican accused Tlaib of, quote, promoting false narratives regarding the October 7, 2023 Hamas attack on Israel and for calling for the destruction of the state of Israel. Tlaib, the only Palestinian American in Congress, has come under bipartisan criticism after sharing a video on social platform X that included the phrase, quote, from the river to the sea. And we mentioned this on Monday's show that she then went on later to defend that term from the river to the sea, which means annihilation of the state of Israel. Her critics have pointed out that the rally cry implicitly calls for the destruction of Israel as a state. Hamas has co-opted that phrase and uses it as well. And again, Tlaib has remained unrepentant over the use of it. It is important to separate people and government, she said. And this was earlier yesterday. The idea that criticizing the Israeli government is anti-Semitic sets a dangerous precedent. That's a talking point that's used a lot by the left when they say, or by anybody, when they start to say what you and I would say is anti-Semitic things. So, yep, again, no specifics on who those Republicans are, but I wanted to pass it along to you. We got to take another break. Stay with us. We are moving fast this morning on Frankly Speaking, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox. I just received this from a viewer, and that's where I'm glad that they clarified this, because there was a resolution to not censor Tlaib, and that's what I thought, but the numbers didn't add up in the one article I saw. So that's what made me confused on the reporting on this. But those who voted to kill the measure, to say not to censure Tlaib, were Representatives Ken Buck, according to this viewer, John DeWart, Mike Garcia, Thomas Massey, Tom McClintock, and Ryan Zink. But let me do a little more research, because I think it gets a little bit in the weeds, because number one, it was supposed to be voted on Wednesday. That got rushed, and then there was the Marjorie Taylor Greene similar measure, and then there was the measure to kill the censure measure. So this is, it all gets a little bit, as Washington is known to do, gets a little bit wonky. Okay, really quick, I wanted to there's a couple things I want to highlight. Here's our guests coming up the rest of the week. I'm very excited about both these guests, or all three of them. Kevin and Mike from Twin Tiers Comic-Con. Twin Tiers Comic-Con starts this weekend, or is this weekend, at the Arnett Mall. Don't miss out on that, and you'll find out all about it on tomorrow's broadcast. And then on Friday, the legendary Don McLean, who wrote one of the greatest songs of all time, American Pie. So Don McLean will be our guest on Friday. Another little bit of information that I want to pass along to you. This is the Big Fox Veterans Day special, brought to you by our friends at the Hilliard Corporation and Carpella's Collision. It's coming up this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, right here on Big Fox. I'm the host. Listen to some of our guests. And just so you're not familiar, what the program is it's for veterans, family members of veterans, or members of the community that want to say thank you for all our veterans have done for us. So here are some of the guests. Jason Richards and Lydia Delgado from the VA Finger Lakes Healthcare System. We'll have Gary Smith, friend of Frankly Speaking, been on the show a few times, the director of the Steuben County Veterans Service Agency. We'll also hear from peer-to-peer specialist Nicole Dabby, and then Patricia Vincent, the president of Twin Tiers Honor Flights. That's just some of our guests on this special broadcast for our veterans. As I will say, having seen and been a part of it, very, very proud of this special. Please don't miss it. And what's kind of neat on the Sunday broadcast, it's all the same show each one. It just gives you more opportunities to watch. Sunday at 10:30, that's right before the football game. And at football at 11, they're going to have a special Veterans Day tribute as well. So I think that'll be a nice addition to that lineup. So please, I hope that you'll have an opportunity to check it out. We're going to take another short break, a couple other quick national stories, but it's not too late. If you have questions about Election Day, anybody that you maybe missed, maybe someone you knew that was running and want to find out what happened, I do not mind reading that on the air. That's what this program's all about. Again, congratulations to all the winners, but also congratulations to everybody that took the time to run, to become a part of the process, to try to be a change, to try to help or better their community. Win, lose, or draw, they can't take that away from you. So everybody deserves to take a step back and go, you know what? Proud of what I did. Again, even if they lost. But man, the voting turnout numbers, you can get discouraged on that, can't you? Well, I don't want to go back into that. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. CNN put together 5 takeaways from the new poll that reveals Biden's challenges. And we just can't get through all of it. But number one, a major takeaway is the age issue. We've talked about that for a long time. People in his own party have talked about that. Van Jones saying, you may like Grandpa, but you want to put Grandpa in this stressful job for 4 more, ultimately 5 more years, because we have all of next year. Next, economic perceptions. That's another way media would not maybe handle that if the party was different. Economic perceptions are hurting Biden. This is another example. Never mind what you're feeling. Never mind that feeling you get when you have to pay for your groceries or your utilities or gas. That's all just a perception. It's really, really good. And that's what the Bidenomics ad, the $25 million ad buy was about, was trying to convince you that never mind what you feel. It's really okay out there. Then you have another problem for Biden, according to CNN, a world spinning out of control. And you can watch that for yourself on the news every night, of course. History doesn't favor Biden is the next takeaway from these recent polls. And a sense of malaise is kind of, well, there's no excitement to vote for Biden. And is there enough excitement to vote against Trump is kind of an argument that's being made. So a sense of malaise that could open a path for Trump. Now, when we come back in our last break, we're going to wrap things up because, again, I mentioned this quickly. Biden's campaign has sent a memo to media outlets complaining about the disparity in polling coverage. Yes, I guess disparity meaning that Biden's getting bad coverage, but Trump isn't. That's interesting. So we'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. Wow. Going to wrap things up here on Frankly Speaking. Just a few minutes left. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on Big Fox. I'm your host, Frank Acom, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. So President Biden's re-election campaign sent a memo to news outlets. This is according to The Hill, asserting that there's disparity in the way the media has covered polling so far, following the coverage of the latest set of polls that show Biden trailing former President Trump in a hypothetical rematch. So out of all the glowing coverage they've received, or some would say the coverage they didn't receive at points when it would hurt the president, that's not good enough for the campaign. They're upset, and this cushy relationship with the media, I don't even know if you'd call it that, essentially demanding the media change what they report on, report differently. And sadly, some of the media will follow what they're being told by this administration. The memo was from the communications director, Michael Tyler. Quote, despite the hair on fire, sky is falling tone we've seen from media coverage over the last few days, Well, I think that's, if you want to label it that, it's because the media is scared because they don't want Trump. So they're just scared that Biden is going to stay in it when, in their mind, he shouldn't, leading to a Trump presidency. It's not about, it's more about the hatred of Trump, but I'll continue. Political predictions more than a year out tend to look a little different a year later. So are they suggesting it shouldn't be reported on at all, or maybe not even do polls a year out? Gallup predicted an 8-point loss for Obama, only for him to win handily a year later. A year out from the 2022 midterms, every major outlet predicted a grim forecast for President Biden. This was what Tyler's memo said. In recent days, the New York Times Santa College poll has gotten nonstop attention. Okay. To the exclusion of nearly every other poll. Wait a minute. Why would they bring up the other polls if polls a year out don't mean anything? Can't have it both ways. But if you zoom out, you'll see a more complete picture. There have been 8 polls in the past 3 weeks showing President Biden leading or tied with Donald Trump. Well, Tyler, I mean, that's a year out. Do you know how much changes in a year? I report on it. So we'll see if the media follows suit and does what they're told when it comes to a memo being released by the Biden campaign. Michael Goodwin at the New York Post, I'm just highlighting this to you if it's something you want to read, if this is something you've been following. He has an opinion piece at the New York Post. Donald Trump's fraud kangaroo court trial is the latest display of dirty politics running amok. It's kind of an interesting look at that if that's not a story that you've been following closely. We're out of time. Again, congratulations to all of our winners on Election Day. Also, congratulations to everybody who took the time out to run and to vote. The voter turnout was not ideal, but again, hang your head high for all of those that put in the work and the effort to run, to become a part of the process. We'll be back tomorrow morning. We'll have our friends from Comic-Con in. We have a lot to discuss. Have a great day, everyone. This is Ben, Frankly Speaking, on WYDC TV, Big Fox.